It's safe to say that throughout life, most strange events have some kind of explanation. A weird shadow could be just a tree branch, odd sounds in the night might just be the house settling, and even bizarre lights in the sky can usually be written off as planes or satellites. But then, there are those moments that stick with you forever. Events that don't fit neatly into reason. What I'm about to share with you is one of those events. It wasn't just me who saw it. My dad, my brother, and I all experienced it together. And even after all these years, none of us have ever been able to explain what really happened. This all started back in 1998. My family had just moved into an old clapboard house on the edge of town. It was the kind of place that looked ordinary during the day, but gave off a different energy at night. The backyard was massive, enclosed by fences. On one side was a tall 6-foot wooden privacy fence that separated us from our neighbors. On the other 3 sides, there was just a 4.5-foot chain-link fence. Behind the yard, there was a narrow strip of grass, almost like a back alley, with a lone streetlight that dimly lit the area. Beyond that, more houses stretched into the distance. My brother and I shared a bedroom that used to be a sunroom. The back wall was nothing but floor-to-ceiling windows, giving us a full view of the backyard. Our beds had to be arranged in a way that left me sleeping directly against those windows, with my headboard pressed to the glass, while my brother's bed sat about 8 feet away against the opposite wall. At night, when the blinds were open, it felt like you were sleeping outside, with nothing but a thin pane of glass separating you from the darkness. One night we were up late, just talking the way kids do. I was lying in bed, half listening, when suddenly my brother went quiet. At first I thought he had just fallen asleep, but then I heard him whispering in this shaky, uneven breath. I asked him, "What? What are you saying?" He whispered again, but too softly for me to understand. Getting annoyed, I told him to speak up. That's when he said, in this urgent, hushed voice, "Don't move, and be quiet." Now, being 10 years old and thinking he was just trying to mess with me, I turned over and asked, "Why?" But when I looked at him, I saw the terror on his face. His eyes weren't even on me. They were locked on something behind me, something outside the window above my head. So I turned around, and there it was. A massive dog's head. So close that we were practically nose to nose, only a thin layer of glass separating us. Its eyes were fixed on me, unblinking. Its snout fogged up the glass as it breathed. I can't even begin to describe the size. It was huge, far larger than any dog I'd ever seen before. I didn't react calmly. I screamed loud and long. The creature instantly ducked below the window, vanishing from sight. A moment later, we saw it dart across the yard. In one fluid motion, it leapt over the chain-link fence like it was nothing and disappeared into the night. My dad and mom came rushing into the room, trying to figure out why we were screaming. We tried to explain, but my brother stayed silent, shaken to the core, while I stammered about something being at the window. My dad grabbed his shotgun and ran out into the backyard, searching. But he found nothing. Just an empty yard, a silent night. He came back inside, frustrated, brushing it off as a nightmare or childish imagination. My brother didn't argue, so the blame fell on me. I was told to stop fooling around and go back to bed. But I knew what I saw. That should have been the end of it, but the night wasn't over. About an hour later, after I begged my parents to let me sleep in the living room and they refused, I ended up back in the room with my brother. Both of us were shaken and unable to sleep. We sat huddled together in his bed, staring out those giant windows. And then we saw it again. From the shadows, the thing emerged, walking along the outside of the chain-link fence. This time we could see its full body. The fence only reached its shoulders, meaning this thing stood at least 7 feet tall, even on all fours. It sniffed around, circling the yard, but something about the way it moved was off. It wasn't natural. It didn't move like a normal animal. Then, with terrifying ease, it hopped the fence again and landed silently inside our yard. It padded slowly across the grass until it came right back to our window. And once more it stared in. Its eyes seemed to scan us, its face nearly pressed against the glass. That was the moment my brother decided he'd had enough. He swung his legs off the bed to make a run for it, when suddenly, the night exploded. There was a deafening bang and a flash of light. The creature staggered sideways, but instead of falling, it instantly bolted. It sprinted across the yard faster than I've ever seen anything move, launched itself into the air and cleared not just our fence, but the alley, and even the back neighbor's fence in a single jump, easily 15 to 20 feet. Then it disappeared into the darkness. Seconds later, my dad came tearing around the corner with his shotgun. His face was pale, his voice frantic. He herded us into the house, shouting that we needed to leave. My mom tried to protest, but he wasn't listening. Within the hour, we were packed into the car and driving to a hotel. We never stayed in that house for long. My mom insisted we couldn't just up and leave, but 6 months later she gave in, and we moved. Over time, I learned more about what my dad saw that night. He admitted to me years later that he had fired his shotgun directly at the creature. From only 15 feet away, he shot a 12-gauge slug into its side, right beneath its arm, straight into the ribs where any vital organs would be. By all rights, it should have dropped dead on the spot. But instead, it barely reacted. It just ran. He said what chilled him the most wasn't even that it survived the shot. It was the way it moved. When it first came into our yard, it was on all fours, but as it got closer to our window, it began to stand more upright. Not fully human, but not fully animal either. He described it as looking like a person in a dog costume, except it wasn't a costume. Its proportions were wrong, its movements unnatural. And then there was the behavior. Earlier, when it circled the yard, it wasn't really sniffing the ground. Its head was low, but its eyes were locked on the window, on us. My dad said it almost seemed like it was pretending to be an animal, like it wanted us to think it was just a dog. But it wasn't. Everything about it was wrong. That was over 2 decades ago. To this day, none of us have an explanation. My dad refuses to talk about it anymore. My brother barely will. And me? I'll never forget the feeling of being nose to nose with something that should not exist. Something that looked human, but wasn't.